The message arrived at 3:00 in the morning and my hands were shaking. Before I finished reading it, I sat up. In bed, the glow of the screen lighting my face, and I knew my life had just changed forever. My name is Elias Carter, and I am the chief human envoy to the Galactic Council. For 6 years I have sat in rooms full of creatures that looked at me like I was a bug that had learned to speak. For 6 years I have smiled, nodded, and taken their insults with grace. But the message on my screen changed everything. The council had summoned me. Not invited, summoned like a servant, like a defendant. I threw on my clothes in the dark. My wife Margaret stirred in the bed behind me. She asked what was wrong. I told her nothing. I told her to go back to sleep. I could not tell her the truth. I could not tell her that the Galactic Council had just declared, in the polite language of diplomats, that humanity was going to be put in chains. That was what their message meant, even though they had dressed it up in pretty words. They were calling our species dangerous. They were calling our fleet a threat to peace. They were saying that we needed to be corrected. I walked out of my home without breakfast. My car waited for me in the driveway, already running, sent by the Terran Council. I climbed in and watched my house grow smaller behind me. I wondered if I would ever see it again. I wondered if any of us would ever see our homes again if I failed. The shuttle ride to the station took 4 hours. I spent every minute of it reading. The Galactic Council had sent a list of charges. They said we had built too many warships. They said we had spread to too many worlds too quickly. They said our weapons were too powerful. They said our people were too violent. Every single charge was a lie, dressed up as concern. They did not fear our violence. They feared our growth. They feared that one day we would be their equals, and they could not allow that. I had read their history, all 12 species of the Council, the Velthari, tall and thin and proud, with eyes like black glass; the Corvani, short and clever and cruel, who ruled through money and whispered threats; the Zelthar, slow and ancient and certain that they had seen everything before; 9 more besides them, each with their own reasons to fear us, but none of them feared us enough. Not really. None of them knew what we were. None of them had looked into our history the way I had looked into theirs. The shuttle docked at the neutral station just before the meeting began. I had no time to prepare. I had no advisors with me. That was part of the insult. The council had demanded that I come alone, one human to speak for all of humanity. They thought this would frighten me. They thought I would crumble under the weight of it. They did not understand what it meant to a human to carry the hopes of his people. They did not understand that we have been doing this for thousands of years, one voice at a time, standing in front of something bigger and older and stronger than ourselves. I walked down the long hall toward the council chamber. My footsteps echoed. The walls were smooth and cold and made of a silver metal that seemed to watch me as I passed. Security guards, 7 ft, tall and covered in armor, stood at every door. They watched me with empty eyes. I smiled at one of them. He did not smile back. At the door of the chamber I paused. I took a breath. I thought about my daughter Lily, who was 10 years old and loved to draw pictures of stars. I thought about my son Oliver, who was 7 and still believed his father was a hero. I thought about the 70 billion humans scattered across our colonies. sleeping tonight, trusting that someone, somewhere would stand up for them. I was that someone. Tonight I was the only one. I opened the door and walked in. The chamber was huge and round, with 12 high seats arranged in a half circle. Each seat held a member of the council, and each one was looking down at me. In the center of the room stood a small podium, low and plain, like a place where a criminal might stand to hear his sentence. That was my seat. They had not even given me a chair. I walked to the podium and placed my hands on it and looked up at the 12 faces staring down at me. The Velthari speaker raised one long hand. The room grew silent. She spoke in the common tongue, her voice flat and clear. Human envoy Elias Carter, she said, you have been called here to answer for the actions of your species. Do you understand the charges? I have read them, I said. Then let us begin. Your species has, in the past 12 standard years, constructed over 400 warships. This number exceeds the limit set by this council. You have also claimed 11 new worlds outside your original territory. This also exceeds the limit. You have refused 3 separate inspections of your weapons facilities. You have refused to share your energy research with this council. You have refused. The time for refusal has ended. Today you will agree to our terms, or there will be consequences. I nodded slowly. I kept my face calm. Inside, my heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. May I see the terms? I asked. A small hologram appeared in the air. Before me, I read it carefully. My stomach turned as I read. They wanted us to reduce our fleet by 80%. They wanted us to give up 6 of our colonies. They wanted us to open all of our research facilities to their inspectors. They wanted us to sign a treaty that would put our economy under their control for the next 100 years. They wanted, in short, to turn us into pets. I looked up at the speaker. These terms are not acceptable, I said quietly. The Corvani delegate sitting to her right laughed. It was a wet clicking sound. Not acceptable, little human. You speak as if you have a choice. Everyone has a choice, I said. Then choose wisely, the speaker said. Your fleet cannot match ours. Your colonies cannot defend themselves against our ships. You have one chance to save your species from great hardship. Sign the treaty and your people will live in peace under our protection, refuge, and we will protect the galaxy from them. I stood there at the podium for a long moment. I looked at each of the 12 faces. I saw no kindness in any of them. I saw no respect. I saw only the cold certainty of those who believed they had already won. But they had not won. They had made one mistake. They had believed their own story about us. They had spent 6 years watching us smile and bow and agree to their small rules, and they had decided that we were weak. They had decided that we were afraid. They had decided that when pushed we would bend. They did not know that my government had been preparing for this day since the moment we first met them. They did not know what was waiting in the dark corners of their own territory. They did not know what I was carrying in the small case at my feet. I let myself smile just a little, just enough. Honored members of the council, I said, I would like to request one day to review the terms in full. I wish to consult with my government before giving my answer. Surely you can grant me that courtesy. The speaker considered, then she nodded. One day, no more. Tomorrow at this same Hour you will return, and you will give us your answer. Thank you, I said. I picked up my case, I turned and walked out of the chamber. My legs felt weak, but I did not let it show. Behind me, I could hear the council members muttering to each other in their own tongues. I could hear the small clicks and hisses of creatures who believed they had already won. They had not won, not yet. Back in my quarters, I locked the door behind me. I sat down on the edge of the bed and let my hands shake. For the first time in hours, I allowed myself to feel the fear. It washed over me like cold water. Then I pushed it down deep, down where it could not reach me. I opened my case. Inside were two folders. The first was thick, filled with every treaty and compromise my government had prepared for me. I had been ready to use that folder. I had hoped to use that folder, but I knew now that I would not. The second folder was thin, only 3 pages. I had hoped I would never need to open it. Tomorrow I would open it. The next morning I woke before the light came through the small window of my quarters. I had not slept well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faces of the council members staring down at me. I saw my children. I saw my wife. I saw every person I had ever known. The weight of it was almost too much to carry. I made myself a cup of coffee from the small machine in the corner. The coffee was weak and bitter, but I drank it anyway. I sat at the small desk and opened the thin folder one more time. I read every word. Even though I had already read it 100 times, I wanted to be sure. I wanted no doubts. At the bottom of the last page there was a single line, handwritten by the President of the Terran Sovereignty herself. Her name was Catherine Bell, and she was the strongest leader our species had ever produced. Her handwriting was small and sharp. Do what you must, Ilias. We are with you. I closed the folder. I pressed my hand against it for a long moment. Then I got dressed, combed my hair, and walked back to the council chamber. The hallways felt different this morning. The silver walls seemed to hum with a quiet tension. The guards watched me more closely than before. News travels fast, even in places like this. Word had spread that the human envoy had not immediately agreed. That was strange. To them, that was interesting. Every species in the galaxy knew that when the Galactic Council demanded something, you gave it to them. But the human had asked for a day. The human had asked for time to think. Some of them must have wondered why. I entered the chamber at the appointed hour. The 12 council members were already seated. The chamber was fuller now than it had been the day before. Other delegates, observers from smaller species, had filled the galleries above. They had come to watch the human be broken. They had come to see the show. I walked to the podium and set my case down beside me. I looked up at the speaker. I have consulted with my government. I said, I am prepared to give my answer. Good, the speaker said. Proceed. I took a slow breath. I thought of my children sleeping safely on Earth. I thought of every human who had ever lived and died so that I could stand in this place. I thought of all the things I wanted to say and all the things I should not. Honored members of the council, I began. Before I give my answer, I would like to speak for a few minutes about who we are, about what humanity is. I believe this is necessary because I think with the greatest respect that you do not yet understand us. The Corvani delegate made a sound that Might have been a laugh. The speaker silenced him with a glance. Speak, she said. Thank you. Humanity is the last of our kind on our world. When we came down from the trees, there were 4 other species of humans on Earth, 4 other kinds of creatures who looked very much like us, who walked on 2 legs, who made tools, who buried their dead over the course of 100,000 years. All 4 of those species vanished. Only we remained. Why? Not because we were the strongest. Some of them were stronger than us. Not because we were the smartest. Some of them had larger brains. We remained because we were, in one single way, different from them. We could cooperate with strangers. We could form bonds with people we had never met. We could unite across great distances for a common purpose. The council members were listening now, not because they cared about my history lesson, but because it was unusual, because no one had ever spoken to them this way before. This ability, this one gift, is what made us what we are. It allowed us to survive ice ages. It allowed us to survive plagues that killed 1 out of every 3 of us. It allowed us to survive wars that tore our world apart. Every time we fell, we rose again. Every time we were broken, we rebuilt. We are, if nothing else, the species that does not stay down. I paused. I looked at each of the 12 faces in turn. When we met you 6 years ago, we were cautious. We were grateful to be welcomed into the council. We wanted to be good members. We wanted to be your friends. We agreed to your rules, even when those rules seemed designed to hold us back. We smiled when you insulted us. We bowed when you demanded respect you had not earned. We did all of this because we believed that in time you would come to see us as equals. We believed that patience would earn us a seat at your table. My voice grew harder now, not louder, just harder. We were wrong. We understand that now. You never intended to treat us as equals. You were buying time, studying us, waiting for the moment when you could put us in our place. That moment, you believe, is today. You have sent your fleets to the edges of our space. You have already blockaded 3 of our outer colonies. You have already cut off communication with our 4th colony, a world of 8 million people. You did all of this while I was flying here yesterday to speak to you in good faith. The council members shifted in their seats. They had not expected me to know all of this. They had not expected me to speak of it openly. They had believed that distance and time would hide their actions until the treaty was signed. So let me give you my answer, I said. I will not sign your treaty. A hiss went through the gallery. The Corvani delegate stood up, his small face twisted with anger. Then you have chosen the fate of your species, human. You have chosen destruction over peace. You will regret these words before the sun sets on your foolish world. Sit down, I said quietly. He did not sit. How dare you command me? Sit down, I said again, or what I am about to say will happen without you hearing it, and you will be the last of your council to understand what has occurred. Something in my voice made him stop. He looked at me. He saw something in my face that he had not seen before. He sat down slowly. I turned back to the speaker. You believed, I said, that because we smiled we were weak. You believed that because we cooperated we were afraid. You believed that because we wanted peace we did not know how to make war. You were wrong about all 3 things. Let me show you why. I bent down, I opened my case, I took out the thin folder, I placed it on the podium before me. 6 years ago, when we joined this council, my government made a quiet decision. We did not trust you, we had read your history, we had seen how you treated other new species before us. We knew even then that this day would come, so we prepared, not for war. Never for war, we prepared for this conversation, the conversation we are having right now. I opened the folder to the first page. This, I said, holding up the page, is a map of your 12 home worlds, every council capital, every major city on every one of those worlds, every shipyard, every weapons factory, every military base, all 12 of your home systems mapped down to the meter. The speaker's eyes narrowed. Every species knows the location of our capital worlds. This is not a threat. Human. Of course, I said, I agree, the map itself is not a threat. Let me turn to the next page. I flipped the page over. The chamber was very quiet now. This is a list of 43 human vessels. Some of them you know, you have seen them, you have inspected them. In the case of a few, you believe them to be colony ships, research vessels, and old mining craft. This list shows their true names, their true purposes, and their current locations. You will notice, if you look carefully, that every one of these 43 ships is currently positioned within striking distance of one of your 12 home worlds. Some of them have been in place for more than a decade. They have been sitting there quietly while you looked at us and saw only a young species trying to prove itself. The council chamber was so silent now that I could hear the soft hum of the lights above. The speaker stared at the page I was holding up. The Zelthar Archon leaned forward, his old face pale. This cannot be, the Archon whispered. Our sensors would have detected such vessels. Your sensors see what they are designed to see, I said. Our engineers spent 20 years learning how to build ships your sensors would ignore. It was not easy. It was, I am told, the most difficult engineering project in the history of our species, but we completed it, and now those ships are in place. I turned to the third and final page. This, I said, is the reason we did not want to have this conversation. This is what your own scientists have called impossible, a way to destabilize a star. Not destroy it, not at first, simply push it out of balance. The effects would be slow enough that people on the worlds below would have time to see what was coming, time to understand, time to wish they had chosen differently. We discovered this 20 years ago. We built the first working model 12 years ago. We have never used it. We have never tested it on anything living. We hoped we would never have to. I closed the folder. I looked up at the council. This is not a threat, I said. A threat is a promise of what might happen if you do a thing. I am telling you what has already been prepared. I am telling you what is already in place. The decision of whether or not it happens is no longer in my hands. It is now entirely in yours. The silence that followed my words was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was not just the absence of sound. It was a thick, heavy silence, the kind of silence that exists only in places where something terrible has just been understood. I stood at the podium with my hands folded and waited. I did not speak. I had said what I came to say. Now it was their turn. The speaker was the first to move. She did not speak. She turned to her aide, a smaller Velthari who stood at her side, and whispered something. The aide hurried from the chamber. I could guess what was happening. The council was trying to verify my claims. They were trying to find my ships. They were scanning their own systems. They were right now sending urgent messages to their home worlds. And they were going to find one by one that I had not been lying. The Corvani delegate leaned forward. His face had lost its earlier anger. Now it looked only old and tired and afraid. "Envoy Carter," he said, and his voice was much softer now. "You must understand, if this is true, you have placed the entire galaxy in terrible danger. If even one of your ships is detected, if even one mistake is made, billions of lives could be lost." "I understand this," I said. "That is why we have waited so long. That is why we have tolerated so much. That is why even this morning I came to this chamber, hoping we would not need to have this conversation. The danger to the galaxy is not something we placed here. The danger was placed here by you the moment you decided to treat us as lesser beings. We simply made sure that if the worst came, we would not be the only ones to suffer for it." Another member of the council spoke now. He was the representative of the Akari, a species of small, gentle beings who had always seemed kinder than the rest. His voice was shaking. "This is madness. You would destroy 12 worlds, 12 civilizations, many of them ancient beyond your understanding. You would end so many lives." I looked at him steadily. "No," I said, "I would not. Your council would. I have placed nothing in motion. I have harmed no one. I have threatened no one. I have simply shown you the consequences of a choice you are about to make. If you order your fleets to attack our colonies, our ships will act. They will not wait for my command. They have their orders already, and those orders were given long before I arrived here. The only way to stop what happens next is to not start it in the first place." The Akari delegate sat back. His small face was wet with what I guessed were tears. I felt sorry for him. He had not wanted any of this. He had been dragged along by the larger powers of the council, but his vote had helped put us here, and he had to live with that. The speaker's aide returned. He whispered something in her ear. Her face did not change, but her hands, which had been folded on the table in front of her, suddenly gripped the edge of the table very tightly. Whatever he had told her, it had confirmed my words. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she raised her voice to address the entire chamber. "This session is in recess," she said. "The council will adjourn to private chambers. The human envoy will wait in his quarters until we call for him again." "With respect," I said, "I will wait here in this chamber. I wish to be present when your decision is made. I do not believe this is the kind of matter that should be decided behind closed doors." The speaker looked at me. For the first time, I thought I saw something like respect in her dark eyes. "Very well," she said, "you may wait. Here the council will step aside. Briefly, we will return." The 12 members rose together and walked through a side door into a smaller chamber. The door closed behind them. I was left alone in the great round room, with only the observers in the galleries above watching me. I could feel their eyes on me. I could hear their whispers. Word was spreading fast through the station, through the entire galaxy. Probably By now every species with a ship in this sector knew that the human envoy had stood before the council and refused to kneel. I sat down on the floor beside the podium. I did not care any more about looking dignified. My legs were tired. I leaned my back against the podium and closed my eyes. I thought about my wife. I thought about what she would say to me if she could see me now. Margaret had always been the calm one in our family. She had always said that people were better than we thought they were if you gave them a chance. She had always believed that kindness could change the world. I wondered what she would think of what I had just done. I wondered if she would be proud or if she would be sad. I thought about Lily drawing her pictures of stars. I thought about Oliver running through the grass in our backyard. I thought about every human on every colony going about their ordinary days, not knowing that their lives had just been held in a set of hands they had never met, in a room they would never see. I hoped I had held those lives well. I hoped I had not dropped any of them. Time passed. I did not know how much. In hour, maybe two, the observers in the galleries had grown quiet. They were waiting as I was waiting. Every species in the council had something at stake. Every species had family members on those 12 home worlds. Every species was right now praying to whatever they prayed to, hoping that their leaders would make the right choice. The side door opened. The 12 members of the council filed back in and took their seats. Their faces were pale. Every one of them, even the Corvani delegate, looked small now, smaller than he had that morning. The speaker remained standing. She looked down at me where I sat on the floor, and she spoke in a voice that was quiet but very clear. "Envoy Carter, please rise." I rose. I walked back to the podium. "The council has made its decision," she said. "We have withdrawn the charges against your species. We have ordered our fleets to pull back from all human space. We have canceled the blockade of your 3 outer colonies. We have restored communication with your 4th colony. All of this will be done within the next 6 standard hours. Do you accept this?" "That is a start," I said, "but it is not enough." The Corvani delegate made a small sound of protest. The speaker silenced him with a glance. "What more do you require?" she asked. I thought for a moment. I had prepared for this. My government had told me what to ask for if we reached this moment. But I found standing there that I wanted to ask for something of my own as well. 3 things, I said. First, full membership in this council with the same voting rights and privileges as the founding species. No more provisional status, no more second-class seats. Second, the permanent withdrawal of all council military forces from any system within 50 light years of a human colony. And third, a public apology broadcast to every council species acknowledging what was attempted here today and recognizing humanity as an equal partner in the affairs of the galaxy. The Corvani delegate stood up. "This is outrageous. We cannot be forced to apologize for actions taken in the interest of galactic peace." "Sit down," the speaker said sharply. The Corvani sat, but his face burned with fury. "The first 2 conditions are acceptable," the speaker said. "Third is more difficult. Public apologies of this nature have consequences that go beyond this chamber. They could damage the standing of every council member. They could create unrest among our own populations." I nodded slowly. I had expected this. I understand, I said, but your population should know what their leaders tried to do today. They should know what almost happened, not so that you can be punished, but so that it never happens again to us or to any other species who might one day join your council. A lie buried in a dark room grows larger with time. Let this one see the light. The speaker was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well, she said. The apology will be made. All three conditions will be met. I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. My hands began to shake, but I gripped the podium so no one would see. Then there is only one thing left, I said. My ships. You wish to know about my ships? Yes, the speaker said, that is what we wish to know. My ships will remain where they are, I said. They will continue to hold their positions as they have for years, but their weapons will remain in standby mode as they have been throughout this entire time. They will not activate unless they receive a specific signal from my government. As long as the terms we have agreed to today are honored, that signal will never be sent. If at any time in the future you or your successors decide to move against humanity again, you should know that the ships will still be there. They will always be there. The speaker nodded. We understand. One more thing, I said. I want you to know that I did not come here wanting this. I did not come here hoping for a moment of glory. I came here hoping to be a good ambassador for my people. I hoped you would show me respect, and I would show you respect, and we would build something together. I am sorry that we could not do that today. Perhaps in time we can do that tomorrow. The speaker looked at me with something that was not quite warmth, but was no longer cold. Perhaps, she said. I picked up my case. I turned to leave. At the door I paused. I looked back at the 12 members of the council. Some of them could not meet my eyes. Some of them stared at me with something that looked like respect. One, the old Zelthar Archon, gave me a small, slow nod. I nodded back. Then I walked out of the chamber, and the door closed behind me, and I stood in the silver hallway and took the first full breath I had taken in 2 days. 6 hours later, every council fleet began to pull back from human space. I watched it happen from the window of my quarters on a small screen that showed the movements of ships across the galaxy. The ships moved slowly at first, as if the captains were hoping the order would be canceled, but no order came to cancel it, so they kept moving, and within 12 hours, every hostile vessel was gone from our territory. Our 3 blockaded colonies were free. Our 4th colony, the one that had gone silent, came back online. The governor there had locked down the colony and prepared for the worst. She wept, I was told, when she received the news that the danger had passed. 6 days later, the Galactic Council held an emergency public session. It was broadcast to every species on every world in every tongue. The speaker of the Velthari stood before the galaxy and read a statement. In it she acknowledged that the council had attempted to force unfair terms upon the human species. She acknowledged that the actions of the council had been wrong. She announced that humanity was being granted full membership with voting rights equal to the founding species. She announced that all council military forces had been permanently withdrawn from human space, and she offered, on behalf of the council, a formal apology to the people of Earth and all their colonies. I watched the broadcast from my home on Earth. I had returned 2 days earlier. Margaret sat beside me on the couch. Lily and Oliver sat on the floor in front of us, watching with wide eyes, not fully understanding. When the speaker finished, Margaret turned to me and took my hand. She did not say anything. She did not need to. I knew what she was thinking. I was thinking it too. 6 weeks later, the first new species in 20 years arrived at the council. They were called the Thrin, a race of gentle, cloud-like beings from a distant system. Their envoy was nervous and polite. She had heard stories, she said, of what happened at her neighbor's council session. She had heard that the council could be difficult with new species. She had come prepared to be patient. An aide approached her as she entered the chamber. He whispered something in her ear. She looked surprised. Then she looked toward the human delegation, where I now sat as a full council member, and she gave a small, respectful bow. I learned later what the aide had told her. It had become by then a phrase that every new species heard when they first arrived at the council, a phrase that every aide whispered quietly just before the doors opened. Whatever you do, be polite to the humans. I sat on the porch of my home one evening, 6 months after the events on the station. The sun was setting over the trees behind our house. Lily had fallen asleep in my lap. Oliver was chasing fireflies across the lawn, laughing, his small voice the only sound in the quiet evening air. Margaret was in the kitchen making dinner. I could hear her humming an old song. I thought about how close we had come. I thought about the thin folder which was now locked in a safe deep beneath the Terran Council building, where it would stay until it was needed again. If it was ever needed again, I hoped it would not be. I thought about the 12 members of the council who had believed they understood us, who had looked at our smiles and seen weakness, who had looked at our patience and seen fear. I thought about how wrong they had been. I thought about how close we had come to showing them in a way that could never be taken back just how wrong they had been. But we had not shown them. In the end, we had walked away. We had made our point, and we had walked away because that is who we are. We are the species that fights when it must but does not fight when it does not have to. We are the species that prefers peace, even when peace is hard, even when peace costs us pride. We are the species that, in the end, always chooses the path that keeps as many of us alive as possible. The Galactic Council would never forget what had happened. The story would be told and retold in chambers and hallways and ships across 1,000 worlds. Children who had not yet been born would learn about the day the human envoy stood before the council and opened a thin folder. They would learn about the silence that followed. They would learn about the choice that was made by both sides on that strange day when the galaxy almost came apart. And they would, I hoped, learn the lesson that the council had learned. The lesson that every species in the galaxy was now slowly beginning to understand. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not afraid. Humanity was not a species to be pushed or cornered or told what to do. We were, for better or worse, a species that had survived everything our own world had thrown at us, and we were not going to bow to anything that came from the stars. We came to the galaxy in good faith, hoping to be friends. We still hoped for that. We would always hope for that, but if friendship was not offered, we would settle for respect. and if respect was not offered, we would take it. Oliver caught a firefly in his small hands. He ran up the porch steps to show me, his eyes shining with delight. I looked at the tiny creature in his palms, its yellow light blinking on and off, alive and free and miraculous. I smiled at my son and told him it was beautiful. He nodded very seriously, then opened his hands and let the firefly fly away. I watched it rise into the darkening sky, a small yellow star among the millions of real stars beginning to appear above us. Somewhere up there, 43 human ships still held their positions. Somewhere up there, 12 council worlds went about their days in peace. Somewhere up there, the long work of building something better was slowly beginning. I held my daughter closer. I called my son to come sit with me. Margaret came out with 3 plates of food and joined us on the porch. We ate together, my family, on a quiet evening on a peaceful world under a sky full of stars that no longer felt dangerous. Margaret looked at me across the small table. She smiled. "You did well," she said. "I did what I had to," I said. "That is the same thing," she said. I took her hand. I did not say anything else. I did not need to. The stars were coming out one by one, and the evening was cool, and my children were laughing, and the galaxy for now was at peace. Negotiations had ended long ago in a small chamber on a neutral station, and from the silence that followed, something new had begun. Something better. Something I hoped that would last.